Hello there. What is going on, everyone? We are doing an interview today. We're going to be talking with Derek Schultz. We're going to be talking about Adepticon. We're going to be talking about Star Wars Armada, maybe some other tournament-related stuff, and tackling the hard-hitting issues. If you guys are new here to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. We're doing a lightsaber giveaway right now. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. And that's all the plugging I'm going to be doing for right now. But let's welcome Derek. How are you? You guys might know him as Karnak. You might know him from Star Wars Armada Explained or from the rules forums. Derek Schultz, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Crabbok. I do appreciate you wanting to reach out. Or I guess we kind of cross-communicated, like, hey, we need to talk about some Armada stuff. So
I
I do
love to
appreciate
talk
it.
about Armada stuff. Absolutely.
Who doesn't like to talk about Star Wars?
I
I mean,
don't know.
honestly,
Yeah, it's those Trekkies. It's those darn. No, I actually love
no
Star
Star
Trek too.
Trek people can't have
So,
them.
I'm half Star Trek too, so Star Trek Armada is
I've
actually
seen
what we're
all the
talking
Star
about today.
Trek
Let's
shows
let's talk about Star
from
Trek
start to
Armada. No.
finish.
Uh,
Star Trek Armada.
that would be great. It would be great. All right, so let's talk about you a little bit for people who aren't familiar. I know I've had you on before. You've been gracious enough to bless us with your time. But for those who don't know, look, I know you have a great YouTube channel that's really Armada focused, and you've been doing a lot of helping out with AMG. So why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So I initially started with a YouTube channel, Star Wars Armada Explained, explaining rules and how things work. I've been really bad about keeping that as updated as much as I would like.
Mm-hmm.
Just life is busy. I have a couple different hats. Full disclosure, I am a subcontractor for Atomic Mass Games. To be specifically clear, I do work for them, but I am not an employee of Atomic Mass Games.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm just a contractor. I don't speak for them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any fancy title. I just help manage the rules forum. So when you ask a question on the rules forum, I'm the guy that's responding to you typically and being like, "Oh, hello, let me answer this question for you," or "Oh, let me go find out what the answer to this question is."
Right.
And pretty much the reason why I was able to get that contracting job was because of the Star Wars Armada channel. So for those of you that are like, "Oh, my stuff will never go anywhere," you never know. You don't know unless you put it out there, unless you try. So I do want to say though specifically that the reason why I'm in the position that I am is because of like people who really help me understand the rules, like Ian Cross and
Mm-hmm.
Dreas Nida
Mm-hmm.
on the Discord, and
Yeah.
otherwise just there's people who helped me get to here. I didn't just like magically show up and know everything.
True.
So I
The
just like,
the
shout out to
community
you.
has been really great. Even throughout like some of over the past year or so, which it's been kind of a rougher time. But we've had so many rules changes with Clone Wars and 1.5 coming out, and it's just it's been an interesting, bumpy but enjoyable road. Well, sometimes it's had its ups and downs, but but
Sure, but oh, sorry. I was just going to say
yeah,
specifically, I think what we're going to be talking about today is you guys see the logo there. Where I'm the event coordinator for Adepticon.
right. So
So we're
there,
just I'm here doing promotional for anyone looking at this that might be from someplace like, oh, what's he doing? Like, just we're mainly talking about Adepticon and events. I'm not here pitching or promoting AMG or representing AMG. I'm
mm,
representing myself as the event
right.
coordinator for Adepticon and other events.
So I have the AMG logo and the Armada logo up there because there has been some news with AMG's presence at Adepticon related to not just Armada, but also X-Wing and Legion and Marvel Crisis Protocol and all of this stuff. And I know you had some insight on that, but before we get to that, because I'm going to ask you about that, for anybody who doesn't know what Adepticon is, it's a major convention in Chicago. Happens once a year, usually around March, April timeframe. And historically, it's been a big one for fantasy flight games in the past. It's a big miniatures and wargaming convention, so it's really big for Legion, X-Wing, Armada, 40K, all kinds of mini wargaming. So that makes it a big deal for a lot of people who watch my channel. But also it's been historically a place where a fantasy flight had given a lot of previews or launched stuff. I think they launched Legion at Adepticon. Like it had its worldwide release date was at Adepticon a few years ago, and then they sometimes have done panels and stuff like that. That's how Fantasy Flight historically had done it. And I know that AMG had said that they were going to support Adepticon and they were going to be there running these tournaments, but they had an announcement about that recently, and so I think that's kind of one of the things that you can shed some more light on. So, what is the deal with AMG's presence for Adepticon this year?
So again, I don't represent them. I can't speak for them, but just based on my knowledge working with Adepticon as an event coordinator, was they were very adamant about wanting to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were making plans. They were planning with me, coordinating with Adepticon. They had actually contracted a company called Cascade Games. That's whom I technically was going to be working for.
Mm-hmm.
And up until when tickets went on sale, we were under the impression that we knew that they were going to run the event, that they're going to provide prize support. They're going to come out and actually host those events with staff on site. But then Asmodee, the Met, they still were not comfortable due to COVID-19, and so they pulled the plug on that attendance. So Atomic Mass Games, it wasn't their decision, I should say. It wasn't Atomic Mass Games' decision. It was above them. So obviously that's unfortunate for everyone involved. We all want to get together to play. And for those of you who don't know, Adepticon, if you are planning to attend, you do need to be fully vaccinated, show proof of full vaccination, and you need to wear approved masks. There are some mask types that aren't allowed. And that's county law, that's state law. That's not something Adepticon is it's not their decision. That's if we want to run the event, that's the rules we have to follow.
Sure.
But for Atomic Mass Games, they are going to commit to still supporting the events with prizes. Officially, they're still supporting with prizes. They just can't be there running the events themselves officially, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's like a personnel. I can imagine that being a big corporate liability thing where maybe AMG still wanted to go, but Asmodee corporate said, no, if we send you and you get a breakthrough case or something like that, we don't want you to be able to turn around.
Employees getting sick and bringing that back for when they go back to their offices. And so that's, as unfortunate as it is, that's understandable. You have to make sure that as a company, you're doing what you can to keep your employees safe.
It makes sense. And I know that companies all across the globe usually have some kind of insurance and things like that. And you would hate to have a whole bunch of extra workman's comp claims because of a very preventable situation. So even though it's regrettable, I think that's, we have this huge surge lately and that it's thrown a lot of plans kind of upside down. So, but there's still going to be tournaments, right?
There are still Star Wars Armada tournaments, X-Wing tournaments, Legion tournaments, Marvel Crisis Protocol. Those are all still happening. It's just the technicalities of who's actually running is shifting, right? Before we were all going to be marshals or helpers, but now we're actually the people who are in charge. Which all of us, Gold Squadron's doing X-Wing. Obviously, they have a lot of experience.
Right.
I have a lot of experience running Armada events. Yep. The Legion events are by experienced people too, so it's just like I can't remember the exact name.
I think Brendan Franz is doing Legion. I think I'm not 100% sure.
So
yeah. I'll talk to him. Yeah, but yeah, very cool. So it's good that familiar faces will be there running these tournaments.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not people who are just like, we don't know what we're doing. These are all knowledgeable people, and we are people that we were still approved. Like, they were like, oh, okay, these are who doing it. We trust all these people. We know you guys are going to get a handle on it and take care of it. The new information for us though was that we didn't know that it was going to be a grand championship. That never came up until just recently. So they are going to officially declare these grand championships. There are world tickets on the line for all their appropriate games.
So that was my next question is, will there be world's invites? Because a grand championship is kind of like what used to be, I think, a national, right? You used to have store champs, regionals, and then nationals. And then nationals was once echelon below worlds. So this is a big deal to win a grand championship.
Yeah, they've rolled nationals and regionals together is kind of what they did because it was kind of confusing about how they were separate, but like the same thing. But anyway, so there's going to be world tickets. They're pushing very hard that they are wanting to hold a Worlds 2022 this year, and they're going to honor all the previous ticket holders for Worlds. I don't know any details about any of that. I know that's just what they've stated and said and what they would like to do. I don't know any dates or locations.
I don't even think they would know yet, too. You probably have to. I think the responsible thing to do would be to wait until it seems like I don't think there's light at the end of the tunnel right now. I don't think there's a clear we'll be cleared up by July. I think you have to wait until that curve is going way down. It's like, all right, now it seems safe to schedule it. I wonder about this. I know for some other games in the past, like when they do Worlds invites, and maybe you have some light on this, but some of our community, there are certain people that go to a lot of tournaments, and you have almost like an inner circle of like people who consistently place top 8 and things like that. And I would presume that at this Adepticon, a lot of the people who may end up in the top 8 may already have a Worlds invite because we're going on like our third year kind of like rolling them over. So if you go, there's a pretty good chance you might only have to get top 16 to potentially get a world invite. Like, is that a good enough? You think that's a reasonable guess or?
It's different with every event because I've heard a couple different answers.
Okay.
In general, again, not speaking for Atomic Mass Games,
Mm-hmm.
this is just when I was present at the event, what I witnessed is that if somebody already had a world ticket invite, they could pass that down. Now, right before the pandemic hit, though, they were not allowing that anymore. But so I don't know if that's a continued policy that Atomic Mass Games will do, if
Sure.
that's an Asmodee thing. I don't know. I can't give a game. I can't say
Right.
either way about that.
I could imagine that potentially being problematic because if you take one hypothetical, let's say it's 4 years until we have another Worlds, then you might end up with 300 invites because they all keep getting passed down, and there's got to be a cutoff.
Issue.
Yeah. So I can see that being an issue, but there, still, I think it's a good reason to attend because there's So that's very, very cool. If you happen to be there, or if you can make it out, definitely sign up to play. Are there? I know tickets just recently went on sale.
They did, yes.
How are we looking for Armada? Is there still spots available for people to sign up?
Yeah, so before I touch on that, I do want to state about other prizes. I know Worlds is the most exciting thing, right? But Armada still will have other prizes. I don't know the full extent of prize support. I am still working on that. I'm getting stuff drafted up. Obviously, there's things that have been offered that I know. I can't talk about it yet. But we have other prize support that we're looking into getting that we want to offer, and more, people, the biggest thing, people are like, are there alt arts? Are there alt arts? Yes, there will be alt arts. I can't say what yet. I can't say, again, for the prizes. But to get into tickets, if you go to the Adepticon website, there are right now 29 of 64 tickets have been sold for the Grand Championship.
Okay.
And that will have, it lists on there a cutoff of top 8. We may do top 16. It just kind of depends on when we get there. It probably will just be top 8 because I know that for what we have to do now that we are a Grand Championship, there are a set of guidelines we have to follow. I don't know what those are yet. So it'll either be top 16 or top 8 or similar. And it will be a cut to a day 2, which is the next day for those individuals. They're going to play new rounds of Swiss for the top billet. We also have a fun little side event called Who's the Bosk? And that has sold 13 of 48 tickets. That's going to play concurrent alongside finals. It's time to run alongside finals. That way people, while they're playing something fun and interesting, which Who the Bosk is, you build a normal, essentially a 370-point fleet instead of 400 points. It follows all the same rules except for you can only bring 4 uniques total, and you get a new commander assigned to you every single round. So you could bring the Republic fleet but get assigned a rebel commander, for example.
Oh my! I want to run some Munificence and get Akbar. That would be
everyone's dream, right?
Right.
So it's like that's the cool thing. There will be we're trying to make a wheel, like a spin wheel, like Price is Right. Like you spin the wheel, get your commander. It might be some other method. We're still working out how we're going to disseminate that, but it's going to be a lot of fun. It's just meant for fun.
Okay.
And that's just 3 rounds. The final thing we're doing is on Sunday. I guess I should mention dates. So the Grand Championship starts on Friday. That's going to run all day, super early. Please arrive early if you're playing in that. And then we have Saturday with those 2 events. And the final event is on Sunday, and that is just a 2-round team tournament of 800 points. And that will last for at least 6-7 hours. You would think that those don't last very long, but they do because team tournaments.
Oh, yeah. Well, you spend twice as much time talking to wait, do you think we should do this? Do you think we should do that? As opposed to just one person doing it. Now this is March 23rd through 27th because I had earlier I had said March or April, and so it because the weekend that they do it varies from year to year. I know in some years it kind of overlapped. So just because we're talking about days, I just want to make sure that I didn't throw anybody off by mentioning April. So it is this year. It is March 23rd. March 23rd through 27th. So very cool, and they didn't have one last year, if I'm not mistaken. So this will be the first year back to Adepticon for a lot of folks. So it's going to be a very exciting year to be there.
The final thing I want to put out too, it's not officially on anything, just because it's technically nothing official. But I will be there Wednesday. I'm going to be helping set up. Thursday, technically there's nothing official going on, but I will be there running demos of my own volition, not associated with Atomic Mass Games. But I want to have demos out for people to see Star Wars Armada. It's on the tables. You can play it. If you're community members and you just want to pop by, play some fun casual games, pop on by, play some fun casual games, meet the rest of the community. So I'll be there Thursday doing stuff like that.
So all you serious tournament players, go on and bring a really bad list. So it's oh, okay, I see what he's doing. He's running Akbar Nebulons. I'm going to be able to beat him, and then surprise everybody with, haha, it's not really Akbar Nebulons. But I don't know. I'm actually no, I'm hoping to get everybody thinking that Akbar Nebulons is really really bad. So this way, when I show up to a tournament someday, and with Akbar Nebulons like ready to rock, and I'm
Take everyone by surprise.
a whole bunch of SSDs will show up, and I'm gonna have double arc Akbar slashes on each one of them, and that would be great. And I'd still probably lose, but I'd have a blast doing it. That's the dream, I think, is to take some kind of ultra jank list and just run the table on everybody at a big event. Like, could you imagine like Crabbok wins Worlds with Akbar Nebulons, and like we don't even know. Like, then it'd be like, all right, that's it. Well, you know what? We don't know what we're doing. Let's just hand over the keys.
I still feel like Peltas would have taken Worlds if we hadn't had the Onagers come out right before.
Oh, yeah, that's such a touchy subject. Some people really really hate them. I just ran an Onager list recently, and I had a great time with it. It wasn't a super try hard list, but it was trying a little bit, and they're so effective, they're so very effective.
Some would say that they're too well optimized and might need some slight balance adjustments. Yes,
well, I think if nothing else, and this is something I would do if I was ever doing an Armada 2.0 or whatever, even a regular FAQ adjustment could do this, but I would allow you to salvo an ignition attack if you were within range of being able to salvo. So if it's an ignition attack that happens to occur at like long, medium, or close range, I think you should be able to salvo that.
That's a request I hear a lot.
Yeah. I've also heard it a lot, and I can't say that I think it would be a bad idea. So it's interesting because I just mentioned like like an Armada 2.0 or whatever, and I know that something like that isn't or I guess isn't really likely to happen right now with the Clone Wars being so recently announced. But you and I have kind of mentioned this, and I've seen you address it in public a couple of times, and I've certainly tried to swat it down. But there's been since this AMG announcement that like, hey, they're not going to be able to be in person at Adepticon. I've seen, for whatever reason, some people will say things like, "Oh, this is the final nail in the coffin. Armada is totally dead." Armada's not dead, by the way. But I've been trying to swat this down, and I can't harp on people too much. Because like time jump, I think it's been over a year now that we kind of got like the news that they had that AMG put out like, hey, we just want to let you guys know while we're continuing to support the game and all this, we have no product in development, and that was a rough day. I know I had live streams that day, and I was very kind of doom and gloom. I was shaken by that announcement because I thought that they were working on stuff like this whole time, and it was a rough time. But I think I think it was rough on a lot of people. But I think there's some
for me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of been in a big kind of depression for a long time after that. But I've come to realize that like there's so much to this game that I'm still playing in tournaments every month, at least smaller local tournaments, but the community is still going very strong, and we have so much game out there right now. So I see this a lot where people say this game is canceled or dead, and I mean, granted, I know you're not an AMG employee, but I mean, you probably know better than I do. Like, if Armada was officially canceled, we would have heard about it by now, And the fact that they are still supporting a tournament at Adepticon should kind of put all those naysayers like, no, the game is still being actively supported. I mean, does that sound fair?
So yeah, what I want to say up front first is, people can have criticisms about how things are done. That's totally fine. It's when it goes past that into like they're doing this intentionally, or like, oh man, they just want to kill the game, and that's not, from my experience, that's not the case. And I have to just be careful of what I'm saying because I'm not representing them. Just based on my own personal feelings, I am very optimistic about Armada.
Okay.
And I think that's about as close as I can say for anything. It's just I'm optimistic.
Well, honestly, from a Armada fan, a super fan like I self-proclaimed to be, that's a pretty good sign. So hearing someone like you saying that they're optimistic about the future, when I know that you've kind of been through the emotional spectrum that a lot of us have been through, that makes me feel pretty optimistic too. So I guess we'll have to see. I guess we'll just have to keep our eyes peeled for 2022 and what happens in the future.
Yeah. So again, Armada isn't dead. Is it on hold? As they've mentioned in their official announcements, there's definitely things that like with everything pandemic related, it's out of their hands. They're having to readjust schedules, timelines, and it's not just for that; it's for all their games. You've seen it for X-Wing and for
Right.
Legion. But you know, the people saying, "Oh, they're purposely ignoring Armada" or anything like that, it's absolutely not true. The developer that I work with, Michael Plumer, essentially the guy I work with on the rules forum, we talk about a lot of stuff all the time. You know, we don't just show up and twiddle our thumbs on the forums. You know, we definitely talk. You know, and there's so that's about as much as I can reveal about, you know, aspects as, you know, we talk about stuff, and that doesn't mean that there is anything or not anything. I can either confirm or deny that there's anything or not anything. You know, you guys all know the spiel. There's
Nobody wants you to. Nobody wants to put you in the position where you're like being pressured to say anything. But like,
Right.
I think optimism is a good takeaway. I think optimism is a real good takeaway for something like this, and I think that's exciting. You know, I'll personally say this as a fan of the game, and I think it's a good feather in AMG's cap that they have recruited some of the people that they have to help to work with them on the rules and to things like, because obviously, you know, I've come to think about it too. Imagine getting 3 games, you know, and an entire IP as big as Star Wars kind of thrown in your lap when you were, you know, kind of knee deep in Marvel Crisis Protocol already, which has been a huge success, and also game number 2, whatever that may end up being, and who knows how many other games they had kind of in development or on the chalkboard at that point. They had plans, I am certain, and this, you know, had to have been a major disruption. So. And I think one of the things that I think we've kind of all come to realize by now is that, unlike with X-Wing and Legion, they didn't have anything additional beyond Wave 10 from FFG done and ready to kind of deliver, whereas X-Wing and Legion have had those already, so they didn't have to, you know, maybe at some point they'll have to be like, okay, now X-Wing's getting a pause while we get caught up but you know, again, it's just a total guess, right? Just total guess. Like, I think my point is to frame that in a way. It's like they weren't given extra stuff with Armada to be able to give you over the course of the next year or two while they figure it all out. And I'm glad that they're working with people like you who are pillars of the community that can answer those questions for them, like whether it's internally or handle the stuff on the boards and be like kind of a good, I want to say rep, even though technically you've made it very clear you're not representing them, but at the same time, you know, like being a good face for the game itself, you've always been that. Before this transition happened, you know, I think we first worked together years ago at Gen Con, and 2019 maybe that was.
2019.
But, yeah. So like, I know that you've always had your best foot forward for the game's sake and for the community's sake. So like, I was really glad when you know, when you were kind of the rules reference robot, as I'll sometimes call you.
Reference robot.
Yeah.
I'm still on the Discords. I still, like I said, I still interact with the community. I'm not prevented from doing that. And oftentimes when people are just so upset and they feel like no one is listening, I'll come along and be like, yo, I know you're upset. Like, this is what I can say. I can't say anything else than that. But just know that, like, we do look, we do listen. If we can respond, we try to. But, you know, past that, we still want to keep our jobs, right?
Right. Yeah. No, of course. And then you know, it's a good time, I think, to be optimistic. It's certainly been a good time for some of the other games, but every game I think has seen some slowdown. Even Marvel Crisis Protocol has seen slowdown, and that's not just because of this transition. It's also in part because of a global shipping crisis, and then of course COVID has a huge part to play in all of these things, as we're still seeing with this. So, you know, it helps to be flexible, and fortunately we are kind of blessed to have had such a big infusion of new Armada content before everything happened. Although I'll be honest,
remember that when all that Armada stuff came out, that was the largest drop of any Armada product at once, period, ever in the game's history. You know, there hadn't been a wave where that much product came out all at once. So
even though it was like within like a month of each other, but yeah, exactly.
You know, again, just there are if you have concerns, you know, have concerns. You know, don't. I'm not saying trust implicitly. Just say, you know, evaluate, decide what's going on. Like I said, for me personally, I'm optimistic. And yeah, that's just keep waiting. As sucks as it says for me to say that, it's like, oh, just keep waiting. It's like, but we've been waiting for years. Like, well.
I bet you there's lots of ship combos and commander and builds that you haven't run yet. So I'll add on, instead of keep waiting, I'd say keep playing, because there's lots of new people coming into the game all the time that are looking for people to play against. So you got a lot of new opponents all the time, and keep.
I play new stuff all the time. I
Yeah. Oh,
mean,
I
I
do.
keep going to tournament. I mean, the tournaments that I'm at that I can actually play in and run at the same time, like for Frontline Gaming,
Mhm.
for some of those. I mean, I just bring something off the wall that like is not meta or professional. I shouldn't say that. I kind of stole the guy's
Mhm.
list from the Texas Open, and I took
Okay.
that to the San Diego Open just because,
Really?
like, oh, that looked really cool.
If
I
it
want to
looks
play
fun,
that.
yeah. If it looks like it's gonna be a
Yeah.
fun, like one of my favorite things to do right now, and I try not to play the same list too many times in a row. I never run the same list twice, but I'll do slight variations on a list sometimes. But even that I try to do sparingly. But like one of the lists I have the most fun with is usually either an SSD list. Because I'm usually hoping that somebody's going to be able to crush it. Like they're going to bring a great counter to it, and I haven't had that happen yet. But the other thing is Radis. Like Radis is just so much fun being able to like deploy a ship mid game, and like feels like such a game changer to me. And so like I think when you have so much fun with a build, it's not really about winning or losing at that point. It's like, can I make it do what it was supposed to do? And if so, then at least I'll get that achievement unlocked. You know, I have a
Just for yourself.
I have a rules question for you,
Sure.
and it's going to be about one of the more recent things, because I kind of consider myself pretty good on the rules, although I'm definitely prone to make mistakes. But it's about the Invisible Hand title for the Providence, which lets you kind of deploy squadrons. Somebody I was playing with was running that, and they said, well, the rules reference says I have to deploy these in a bubble, and I'm like, well, yeah, you have up to range 3, and no, it says within range 3, and I'm like, well, that just means within that bubble, and apparently he cited to the rules reference forums where you had been like, no, it has to be more than 2 but less than 3, like in that ring, like a donut, like on the donut, not in the donut
it's been
hole.
referenced to as the donut internally.
Yeah. So let me ask you about where where was that ruling like founded, and like do you think it was intended to be initially like within 1 to 3, or is it just because like there's precedence for it? Or I'm sorry if this is a curveball if you weren't prepared, because you might have to reference. Hold
No,
on.
you're good.
Okay.
So obviously, some of this is I can't discuss internal things like
Okay.
internal development. But in terms of this was something that what kind of also took us by surprise. Like, oh, it does say this, and
Okay.
so I will say that we kind of were surprised, like, by the wording of that card. So the reason why that is because it does state within 3, and within is a defined word of it has to be entirely within a band. So technically, the card wasn't broken. It works exactly how it's supposed to work, but it's only within that range 3 band. It's not 1 to 3, which actually led somebody to point out and for us to discover that this actually impacted another card that we need to update, and that was for an interdictor, because it says the same thing, but no obstacles can actually fit within the definition. So like
Oh.
we have to fix that too, because that's because the definition
Rules as
for
written versus rules as
rules
intended.
is written.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it's like it was put out that way. Does it actually break anything? No. Does it actually make things a little more interesting and a little bit more difficult to work than maybe what the initial thought was? Sure, but it's not the card's not broken. It still works. So it's like, well, we don't know what the developers intent, because obviously this is Atomic Mass Games, not Fantasy Flight Games. We couldn't go by what somebody had initially designed it for. We go by what's written in the rules. It still works within the rules, and so that's kind of like, well, that's what it says, so that's what we have to go with.
Okay. For whatever it's worth, I'm gonna throw my vote in the hat to change it to 1 to 3 at some point. Whenever a revisionist opportunity presents itself, you're like, hey, should we do this? Well, Crabbok wants it done, and of course, then they'll be like, hell no, forget it then. But no, I think I can see some thematic reasons, like maybe they launch them out at such high speed it takes that long to slow down, and so if they don't have a clear shot, they can't launch them out. But yeah, that was always an interesting one to me, because I was thinking like, yeah, and that's what I was looking for. Is it because it doesn't say 1 to 3?
Right. If it said 1 to 3, then that would be. But the card wasn't broken as written, and again, I can't speak about like if that's intended or not intended, or because when we looked at it from our standpoint, not taking into account anything from the past, it's like, well, it works exactly how it's written. So that was the approach that we took.
Until such time that like squadrons come out that are physically larger than who knows, like ultra large squadron bases. I'm like, well, wouldn't that just be a ship?
Yeah, even with the quote unquote donut, for us, for me personally, I've not seen that be an issue where that's been a problem for somebody. I
Mhm.
mean, like I said, I know people want the increased flexibility, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, think of how powerful this card is, and having something like that, it's a clear strength with a clear weakness,
Mhm.
right? So that's the kind of stuff that, for me personally, I kind of enjoy game aspects of that
Sure.
nature. So I know some people don't agree with me, and that's okay. We can all have an
Mhm.
opinion that is different. Go make your own board game with
Yeah. Yeah.
and make the exact same card and it says 1 to 3. And I'm not trying to say that to be dismissive. Sorry if it comes
No, yeah,
off
yeah.
that
No,
way.
but well, some people don't realize, like, as I talked with you earlier about like trying to do development for something, because I had an experience where I was trying to do some development for some tokens, and come to realize that when you're not doing it, it seems like, oh, they should totally do this and they should totally do that and this should be this way, until you're actually there designing something and getting kickbacks because of reasons that you weren't aware of. And now it's a very different process when you're actually in that chair trying to do, trying to work on something. So it's very easy
Right.
to throw criticism, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. But and they probably won't ever realize it until they try it. So I definitely urge you, people to try your hand at some game development. It's not even close to as easy as it might seem. There's so many like horror stories of people who were spent years working on a game, and it just and it just couldn't take
Never
off.
went anywhere.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So,
But
but for that question, yeah, that's a pretty unique one, and it's kind of one that is, even for me to this day, I still kind of chuckle over. It's like, oh, whoops.
and I wonder how many things out there people are just, because it happens to me all the time. I get a lot of questions, and sometimes I don't respond to them because there's some things I just don't know, and that's why I usually tell people, well, jump in Discord. That's a better forum, a better place to ask questions and interact with like a larger group of people than just me sending me an email, and maybe I get to it, maybe I don't. But it's just a really interesting thing how many people have been playing certain rules a certain way. Like I can't tell you how many people get criticals. That's not how Overload Pulse works. Like how many people do all these things. Like there's probably like a top 10 common mistakes, and I think I've done videos on this in the past. But oh, do I spend the critical die, or well, I got two criticals, so shouldn't it do two face up? And they're like, no, that's X-wing. This is Armada. So like there's so many things that people you play wrong, and if you play it wrong with your group, and your group starts playing it wrong, now you believe that you're playing it right, and it gets
Yeah.
reinforced by your group. And I've had issues where I taught a whole group a way to play that was wrong. Like I didn't know that, once upon a time I didn't know that two squadrons touching, even on an obstacle, I thought that meant they weren't obstructed. But the base is not perfectly straight, so they're cardboard to cardboard. It goes through, and so it's like, oh, and every once in a while, even if you're experienced, there'll be a rule that is like that, like, whoa, shatters the glass, and you're like, I've been playing that wrong my whole life.
There's still people, veterans to this day, that people I've known for years, and I'll be like, oh yeah, the rule's this way. They're like, wait, what?
Yeah. And the longer you've been doing something, the harder it is to accept that you were wrong about something, and that can become a bummer. Like I was
I mean,
I
I'll
was so
raise my hand.
certain.
I did something the other one of the other events. I made a wrong ruling, and he's like, I really don't think it's that way. I'm like, well, let's just. I'm the judge, unfortunately, so we're just gonna play it this way. And then I went back later,
Mhm.
and I found out I was totally wrong, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
with the maneuver tool.
Mhm.
And I thought that you couldn't make a certain maneuver, but turns out, oops, yep, yes, you can, totally allowed. It's because I've been using a faulty maneuver tool for years, and I
Oh.
didn't think you could make a maneuver. So it's just like, oh, well, that's so. But now that's
Oh,
officially
that's so
clarified.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. I can
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. But like, yeah, things like that happen. Like I didn't know at one point, it was a little bit earlier, but I didn't really know that you could overlap the maneuver tool if it were a result of a bump. I'm like, you can't
Yep.
deliberately overlap. I'm like, oh yes, you can, if you know how
And
to finagle
the
it.
initial movement can't be deliberate,
Right.
but if it's unintentionally
Yeah.
deliberate, that's something
Yeah.
different.
So you can have a planned failure. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, all right. Well, thank you so much for sitting down, talking with me and the community about Adepticon, about optimism, and about just all the things that people can look forward to between Adepticon and Worlds. Is there anything else that you want to leave everybody with before we kind of end things here?
Sure. Yeah. The final thing I want to make sure I'm pitching out is, for those of you that are going to Las Vegas Open, which is in a few weeks, I'm going to be there. I'm excited to go back to Las Vegas.
Mhm.
For those of you that are still on the fence about the LVO, there is one ticket remaining for the championship tournament. And of course, we have a couple other casual tournaments going on as well. But if you want that last golden ticket, you better get on it.
Okay.
So, but it's going to be a fun event. If you didn't see the prizes up on the Facebook post, Admiral Tater did almost all the prizes for LVO. They look fantastic.
I've seen some of them. They're very, very nice. It's a great spread. Yeah. And LVA was not a official AMG sponsored event, though. That was more of just a Frontline Gaming sponsored event, right?
It's just Frontline Gaming.
Yeah.
Nothing's been conveyed to me about if there's any support from AMG or not, and I'm the guy that's kind of like doing it. So right. If somebody forgot to tell me, it's a little late by this point.
As of right now, with the best information that we have is the best information that we have.
Right.
All right. Well, fantastic. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I want to thank you guys all for watching. Big thanks to Derek. Be sure to check out Star Wars Armada Explained. I'll put a link to that in the video description below. It's an amazing channel where he really goes over like so many individual cards and like interactions and rules about them, and it's like so much more depth than I could ever do. So it's very cool. Have you gotten through all of the cards yet?
No, this year's been hard. I've had to wear a lot of different hats, and I really have been slow on putting out videos because there's just other priorities I have to do. But I still am slowly putting out a video like every couple of weeks.
There you go. Do it when you can. Don't let it stress you out. But it's very quality content. Thanks again for hanging out with us today. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make this all possible. So thank you for your continued support. I will talk to you guys later. And as always, may the Force be with you.